That's where we at.
So here we are.
We got.
We everyday people getting this podcast in pretty much, but a couple topics to talk about today. We're going to talk about gun control.
Or the lack thereof. Or the same
hey,
thing.
man, I like guns.
No, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, you have to, kind of put that into the equation because, like, yeah, you're, decorated and educated and well versed in life, but everybody has access to the same internet. So I think that's kind of what the debate comes down to, because it's like I would pay 35 fucking 40% in taxes if it meant that every registered gun owner was as responsible as you are. Like, if there's a way to make that happen, take all my money in taxes, because I'm not worried about a whole bunch of other shit. My kid can do whatever he wants in the streets. But
Right.
for us to not live in that society where harm reduction is actually based on some type of science, we have to put it into the hands of a bunch of politicians. And then those are the ones that decide, like, hey, we can't say a dude with a military background is, more deserving of this constitutional right. It's a right that all Americans get, even, like, regardless of accreditation behind it. So that's where that's where the government's stupid for not being biased towards things.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and I think a lot of people are biased because they have this perspective that, if we let the government modify the Second Amendment and put a bunch of hurdles and hoops that have to be jumped through, that's just the beginning. And I think some of that, rings true in history, because there's never been any instance where the government has taken away or enhanced their authority and then later gave it back to the people. It
Right.
never happens. So it's like, as a gun owner, I'm thinking, hey, I'm all for, stricter gun laws, but at the same time, it's that distrust for government where I'm like, look, if we give them an inch, they're going to take a mile and be at my house saying, hey, you got a bunch of guns, you got to give them up. And I swear on my life, man, like, I would give away almost all my guns, maybe all of them, probably not all of them, but like the most of them. I'd keep maybe one. And if I knew that was going to make the world a better place for my kids, for my family, but it's just not that, like, that guys don't.
It doesn't really, to me, it doesn't really equate to, like, enumeration. Like, it's not really, like, there's more guns than people in the country, and it's been that way before the internet. It's just that our society, like, we're more sensationalized by it. It's like, oh, okay, that's acceptable, or we're seeing that. So, like, my view of gun control, it's like, wait, let's, who's to say we can take them away? But I mean, they were able to kind of mechanize some type of solution with, like, those, like, crack cocaine bills, when they were like, oh, we can make you guys stop it overnight if we want to. And I've never with gun control even remotely heard that approach. How, like, hey, we've got a clear solution to this dangerous problem in the country. Throw all the crack dealers in jail forever. And it was ethical to do to that demographic because they lost their rights as humans, centuries before that. But to do that to, gun owners, it's unethical because those are the definition of Americans. So, like, that's why it's like, hey, there is a solution, but, we've been down that road before. We saw how polarizing and divisive it is towards to the country.
Mm-hmm. So wait, are you saying, like, the laws that passed in, like, probably Nixon, like the Nixon time frame where there was that big war on crime, but really it was a war on
like
crack people.
94, like Bill Clinton time frame when they threw all the crack dealers in jail. Like before that, there wasn't a line in the sand, you know, there wasn't mandatory minimums and these like 100 times thresholds like for the sentencing. So like when they introduced that, that's when we as a country saw that you can mechanize this to stop a problem instantly. It didn't stop crack, you know, it didn't stop any of that, but it showed that the government can mechanize certain things to drive certain goals, you know. But with the gun control debate, it's like, nah, we're not going to throw those guys in jail. They're not going to go as easily, you know. It's like, yeah, we're not going to try that with them. Like, we can do that. We've done that, but not with that crowd. So that's why it's kind of, you know, it's confusing to me because it's like, there is a way, you know, like if it were a discriminatory process, just like the 94 crime bill, is that a bad thing? You know, if they say, hey, if you were in the military or if you know, have 0 points on your driver's license and, you know, have been mentally checked out, you can have a different set of privileges than everybody else. That's like, to me, is that a bad thing? Or is it, you know, that our Constitution doesn't want to enforce, like they don't want to discriminate in that manner, but it's kind of like, okay, when the shit hits the fan, that's what we got to do.
Well, I'm going to say that back to my original argument, you know, the Constitution, I think the way it was designed was that government doesn't interfere, you know, with civil rights of, you know, to bear arms, freedom of speech, like, you know, the human given rights, like the government shouldn't intervene in that. And to my original argument, if you let them monkey around with like the Second Amendment and put all of these requirements, like that's just the beginning of the hill. And before you know it, the only way you're going to be able to get a gun is if you're white and rich. And let's face it, the main population in this country that are gun owners, what race are they, BC?
Probably white.
Legal gun owners.
Oh, white.
So, so they're not pushing that noise, man. The government. Go ahead.
Sorry to cut you. No, that's the bad thing about, you know, me even being in favor of that argument, because it's like, yeah, you know, if you want to regulate something, it's gonna be appropriately regulated. So like that aspect of appropriation is like, yeah, we're gonna, you know, like it costs money to meet these statutes. It's not going to be socioeconomically fair as a process.
Right.
But I don't know. It's kind of like, if we don't, you know, it's like the best thing I can think of is like, I can equate it to the crack epidemic, because like right now we're seeing a rise in gun violence, but we're not seeing a rise in legislature behind, like, to combat it. You know, it seems like we're seeing a rise in, I guess, like evangelical viewpoints and polarizing views, but the legislature to like affect anything, it's not behind it, because probably like what you're saying is you don't want to perpetuate that slippery slope where we're like, all right, let's introduce these requirements, because to me and you they might seem ethical, but to somebody that can't even get to the DMV in their city, you know, it might, you know, be very arbitrary to their constitutional rights. So
true.
It's on both sides, but you know, my perspective tells me that in a state of emergency, or if that's, you know, what certain like climates are declared to be, it's okay to take people's rights away. They did it before, you know. If that's what we have to do to get everybody as educated or familiar with owning a gun in the society we live in as you are, let's run it up. Let's run up a tab and be like, hey, everybody has to be this educated. If you can't get this educated, you gotta be like, we have to introduce some type of arbitration, or else it's like the bigger the internet gets, the harder it's going to be to control guns. And the internet's not slowing down anytime soon.
Well, and you got countries like Australia that I think their government took somewhere in the ballpark of 650,000 guns off of their civilians.
Mm.
And statistically speaking, it did make a significant impact on their crime rates and their firearm assaults or felonies. Like, they just weren't there anymore.
And the fight
But
became
I think if you try to do that in the United States, number one, you're only going to take the guns from the good people. All the bad people, all the hood, we're still going to have guns because we never got them the right way to start with, and they're not recorded under us anyway.
right.
So you can't come get them. You're going to take the weapons from all of the good people that would normally protect themselves and leave them vulnerable. What if you change the laws, BC, that say something like this? You see a mass shooter and you're carrying a firearm and you shoot that mass shooter, there's a whole separate set of laws that you go through. Whole different set of laws.
But I mean that's an approach, but like I can see where that's coming from. Like, that there should be supporting guidelines to everything in regards to like ownership and constitutional rights and stuff like that. But I can't understand, like, I can't bring myself to understand how that level of discrimination, like, we shouldn't propose it. Like, we shouldn't say, hey, if you want to own a gun, it costs $3,000 a year.
Right.
Because right now, the most affected area in regards to gun violence is the inner city. It's the people that wouldn't be able to do that, So it's like a discriminatory suggestion, but to me, it's like that's the impacted area. And if these kids, if it's the same thing, if it's the same objective as stopping the crack epidemic and stopping this inner city violence epidemic, tell these 16-year-old kids that they're going to get 25 to life for having an AR-15. Like, I don't know why these 17-year-olds that are, you can drop out of school, you can have, certain points on a criminal record, you can have certain biological and mental health characteristics, and nothing stops you from what the internet will deliver to you. So,
or stops you from getting a gun.
exactly.
Right? Yeah.
So it's like you can walk into Walmart and be from an impoverished neighborhood and be planning to commit robberies for the rest of your life, or you can be a doctor. The law is indiscriminatory, and I think that's where the issue lies, because it's like,
Well,
the people that are affected, hey, I'm a black guy. I don't care. It's the inner city that's the most affected by gun violence. It's the inner city that was the most affected by the crack epidemic. I'm in favor of a lot of discriminatory solutions. Like, if they did Adderall the same that they did crack, you wouldn't have a bunch of freaked out college white kids. They told these kids you're going to jail for 10 years for abusing this or selling on the street. It would significantly clean up those issues in America. But we're just tied to this idea that we can't discriminate, and that's a bad practice, that we're on a slope of just watching America burn from the inside out.
Well, I like your idea, BC, because although it would be labeled as discriminatory, it's not racially discriminating.
Exactly.
So if
Exactly.
you've got a criminal record, or if you've got a psychological history, stuff that rolls up to maybe you shouldn't have a gun, then those should be factors that we take into account. But even if we did, in a state like the one we live in, I could sell you my gun and I don't have to report it to nobody.
Correct. But I mean, you can do that with you. So one of the issues is like, the difference in all of these different like government bodies across the country. You can do that in California and have a different penalty than you would have doing that in New York. So where that comes into play is, like you were talking about socioeconomics and stuff, is it's like Chicago has the strictest gun laws in the country, and they have the most gun violence in the country. And those two might be tied hand in hand. It's like, hey, yeah, I've got this gun, but I'm still living the same lifestyle. I'm still not going to jail.
Right.
I'm going to use it
Right.
regardless. It doesn't matter
Right.
where I got it from. It's going to be used in the same manner. So
Sure.
it's hard to find out like what actually perpetuates it, but it's not slowing down.
No, no, but I'm stuck thinking like the most the closest point of intervention is society. You
Mm-hmm.
can call the police, you can call the FBI, ATF can respond, the fucking military can respond, but everybody's dead at that point.
Oh yeah.
What we need is more people like me that are embedded in all of these different institutions that if somebody wants to come in and try to shoot up a school, okay, I know as the person carrying at that school, if I was to witness somebody mass fire students, I can shoot that person and not worry about going to jail.
Right, but at this, I mean, in that argument, it's a mass shooting's already been committed.
Well, no, I'm there when it's happening.
So I mean, in terms of orchestrating and like it actually playing out, it takes 1 second for a mass shooting to start, and if you can't be in every room at every time, whatever your reaction time is, maybe any amount of fire in a public place is, a catastrophe. You
Could
know,
be. Yeah.
because I've never heard of any situations where somebody's on the news like, hey, I prevented this mass shooting.
Oh yeah. No, it happens.
I've seen people
Usually in
react
like robberies.
because like most of the ones that I'm seeing lately, it's defenseless communities, it's school, movie theater, it's this
Right.
kind of stuff where practicality says that we can't afford to have somebody here 24 hours a day with a gun. You know, it's
Right.
a mosque, it's a nail salon, it's these things where if we want to build armed security into the cost of operating the country, I'm fine with that. Like I said, I pay a bunch of taxes to live, that comfortably. It's just that the collateralization of that, what would it do to our mentality as a country? What would it turn us into if we're like, we have to have a dude with a gun on the bus, but we trust the bus more, but how did we get here? Or, my kids, Marshall isn't as equipped as the private school's kid. I feel like my son's less safe. So it's like, how do we understand that, like just what you said, that, society does need to support, the
Mm-hmm.
cure, or at least how not to be as intimidated by it.
Hmm. It's a deep conundrum. But I think we might be at a good place to kind of segue into the race relations. The reason I say that is because it kind of relates to firearms and kind of what we were just talking about. But let's open it up a little bit and talk about some race relations. I don't know if you saw the article today about the 65-year-old woman that was assaulted in New York.
No. Or wait, I think I did. Somebody was walking and punched her or something.
Well, this dude kicked her as she was like trying to go into the door. You're gonna have to watch this. This dude kicked her and then she fell down and then he stomped her like 4 or 5 times.
Mm-hmm.
65-year-old woman. And this is 200 and I would say the dude's probably 240, 230, black dude.
Well, I mean, I'm a it to me like that kind of stuff. What race was this lady, by the way?
Like she was Asian. I don't know if she was Korean or Chinese or Japanese or Indonesian. I don't know what ethnicity of Asian she was, but she was Asian.
Because to me, like the way I look at it, it's gonna sound like I don't know morbid, but I'm honestly surprised that we don't hear about more of that. Like, not that it's
Dude.
acceptable, not that it's okay, but like I think that we have like it's something we talked about like off camera, but like it's we have a lot of undiagnosed mental health issues in our country. And we have a lot of, I guess, social antagonization in our country that, varies off of who's the most marginalized or who's the most affected by things. So with all those constantly revolving around each other, you got to think in these big cities, at least in my head, I'm like, at least 10 times a day, somebody's going to commit what looks like a hate crime, but is more a reflection on our, how we take care of sick people in our society.
Mental health wise, you mean, right?
I never look at these issues like, to me, it's like, it might have been an older lady that got assaulted. She might have been a certain race, but I would bet dollars to donuts that the assailant had some mental health issues more than he had some social health issues. It's like he's got like these, a lot of the times people have something biological that goes unsupported or undiagnosed for so long that their reaction is attributed to whatever the climate says it is. It's like, hey, there's something going on between races, and it's like, this dude might have just been a nutcase. He might have done it to another black person, and if he did that, it's not a news story. So like, we're in this over sensationalized society where we never know what's going on.
Right. Well, I don't know if you can see this, but my buddy made me this shirt right here. His name's Deshido, and what it signifies is Black Lives Matter, and then it's wrapped up in a Korean flag. And he made it to commemorate the LA riots and like the position that Black and Asians were in back then and how they banded together. And this was before the Asian hate thing. And the anti-Asian hate website will tell us that there's been over 4,000 like hate-related Asian crimes just in 2020. And we know who to thank for that. But it breaks my heart, bro. Like, if you're going to fuck somebody up, like, okay, but an old lady, like a 65-year-old lady, I don't care what race it was. Like, I mean, it could be, if I seen somebody do that to a white, Mexican, Asian, Black, anything, bro, like, I'll probably lose my shit. I will lose my shit.
But it's the society we live in, man, because it's like, I don't know if if I look at things the wrong way or I look too much into them, but there's a lot of lead in a lot of this water. And there's an alarming amount of lead in some of this inner city water. So sometimes you'll hear about this young African American just reacted like a monster out of nowhere, and it's like, nah, my man's been drinking 33 octane from the sink since he was 4 years old. Like, that might, so I don't know if I can diagnose the Black community, but I want to attribute all the violence to lead in the water.
I wish
all those dudes just had that lead.
I wish.
But no, 65-year-old lady, what person, you can't be in your right mind, right?
No.
I don't think hate has evolved to that degree where we don't see that aspect of humanity.
Well,
hopefully not.
He told the lady, "You don't belong here."
Oh man. If he's Black, I'm going back to the lead, man. The lead did it.
Man, that would make a lot more sense than whatever the fuck else could have been going through this dude's mind. But, I mean, there were bystanders that just stood there. They just stood there and watched a 65-year-old lady get stumped.
Well, I mean, the sad part about that is, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm ignorant to some of it too, but I think a lot of people, I think a common standpoint is that a lot of us don't understand Asians' cultural identity in America. So it's like we've never been able to be in support of them truly or against them truly because their role in this country has been so
quiet.
quiet. Yeah, it's so mysterious for like throughout time. Like you hear these things like the Asians built the railroads, and then they were the smartest people ever forever after that. And it's like never really introduced to that plight that all these other recognized social or civil rights issues have to go through. It's like, oh, did they skip that, or were we ignorant to it because they don't appeal to our sensationalized culture?
Nah, man, we changed history on them, man. They went through it like the brothers did, like back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, all the way down to like concentration camps in Arizona.
Yeah,
they're still there, and Iwo Jima and all that shit. They're still there, and they still come. There's still Asian populations that come out to Arizona to go and look at that piece of history, and like they didn't teach me one fucking story about that in school. Not one, bro.
nuts. And it's like, did they just do a good job getting over it? Is it like our community was like, we're like, we haven't got over slavery yet, so let's, like maybe they were just like, hey man, we'll fucking make the cameras. Who cares? Like, let's just get it out the way. Let's get a new economy.
I mean, they're Americans, man. Maybe they forgave their country.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Like, maybe they got a better mindset than a lot of us do, because a lot of us are like, fuck this place. But this is our country. You know what I mean? Like, and it's not going to change. We could say fuck this place all we want, but we still got to live here.
Right, and I think that might be how, I guess, the Asian, the culture can appear to be unaffected for a long time of hate. It's because they have a true cultural identity. It's like, oh, we have a home. It's like there's stereotypes they're saying they're not true, but like with African Americans, black people, it's like, oh, no, we don't have a culture. Like all that stuff is apparent. It has had the effect on us where, in this situation, I was like, no, that didn't affect us. We're, still thriving. We still have a strong economic presence in this country. We're unaffected by that hate. So it's like, that's why, I mean, like, that might be why I've turned a blind eye to their particular variety of discrimination and hate. But I mean, it's apparent. Like now that you read the news, you're like, oh, again, Jesus, stop riding the subway. But it's like all the time. It's I don't know how to slow it down, or if we gotta just click up with them.
Well, that's a given. I think this is a call to people like me that carry guns and train. And I want to put the challenge out, for people because, like I told you before, I think the true solution lies in society. Here's the rub, though, is that you have to remember, like the dude that kicked the lady, that 65-year-old lady, and stomped her on the ground. Maybe the people that were in that hotel watching were thinking, this motherfucker is crazy enough to kick a 65-year-old lady. 100%. I'm not going to go out there and get shot or stabbed or whatever. But that's why I carry a gun.
Right.
That's why I carry a gun, and that's why I train with techniques to eliminate people like that. My big thing is like, I already know if I get involved in something like that, they're going to run my record. They're going to see that I compete and train in martial arts. They're going to see that I have fucking teens of guns, and I'm going to get booked. I might lose my job because my job ain't going to care. You shot this dude that was, stabbing an Asian woman that was 65 years old, and we get it, but we just can't fuck with you.
You got this ARS charge, so
right.
This charge doesn't tell that context, so you got it.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, if it's not normalized in society, you kind of have to expect your job or apartment complex or gym to react that way, and it's like, wait a minute, these are constitutional rights, and it's like, not when you use them,
Right. Like, remember when we worked at the COE, right? Remember?
The danger zone.
The danger zone. If somebody would have came up in there and, hey, amnesty, I carried my gun every day at the COE. Oh well. But if somebody would have walked up in there, started shooting people, and I shot them and killed them, that company we worked for would have been like, "You're a hero. Here's a fat ass severance package, but you're fired because you're not supposed to have a firearm at work."
Oh, they would have actually said, here's a phone number to call because we want to give you that severance, but we're
True.
not finna be behind that transfer to
True.
you, Mr.
True.
Terrorist. You
You're
know, if
right.
you want to get
Yep.
this arbitrator, we'll get that money there. We're not, hey, we're proud of you. Get the fuck out. You
Yep.
get out. You can't bring that to work. You know, you're a patriot. And you'll
Yep.
be able to go to the White House because you don't have to work tomorrow.
Yep.
So that, I mean, it's a weird thing. Like sometimes I think that these mass shooters and stuff. I always go back to gun control, but sometimes I think that they're like in their mind, they're like everywhere they go, they're like nobody around here would stop me if I felt like doing this, you know. And they're just in the grocery store, like nobody would hear, you know. And it's like they're in the library, like I can do that, and it's a niche of some type of power dynamic between some weird
Yes.
and that exists within like 0.00001% of our society, but our society gives that 0.0001% to occasionally exercise that fantasy, you
Well,
know.
shit. 0.001% of 360 million people is a pretty substantial number still. Far over 100. So
Yeah, we got 2,000 mass shootings in the last year, so it's a it's a lot. It's like, wait, that many mass shootings? It's like, yeah, but a lot of that's gang violence. It's the lead in the water. If you ask me, I mean, if it's black violence, I'm blaming
Yep.
the lead. If it's white violence, I'm blaming the Constitution. It's just,
Yeah.
like with race relations, I think that it, like what you said, like it makes, us speaking to our inherent rights as a minority community is important. It's important for our voices to be in support of their needs, and it's important for vice versa. So, I mean, it's gonna, hopefully it has a trickle down effect socially. Um, but I mean, my money's going on like it's almost Latin 30. It's like they're gonna get them out of here next, and maybe we'll click up. But America
Yeah.
usually only hates one group of people until they stick up for themselves, and then it's like, all right, let's see what the gays are back up to. They only want so many rights at a time.
Fuck, you're right. Well, I think we reached a good point to kind of wrap up for now. Maybe we'll pick this up on another episode. What do you think?
Yeah, man. So I mean, it's a good talk. You got any closing remarks? Anything you want to leave with?
I hope that any martial artist that catches a motherfucker doing some shit, I'm gonna break it because I don't study every martial art right now, but right now I'm into jujitsu, so I'm gonna challenge every jujitsu practitioner, whether it's Brazilian or traditional Japanese. When you see somebody like this dude in New York City that beat this 65-year-old woman, obviously you're going to want to take an inventory about what's going on there. And I'm not advocating, getting into these conflicts necessarily, but I want to see these people's arms broken. That's what I want.
I like it.
Yeah.
I think I would be cool with seeing like a new social media site pop up where it's just like bigots getting their shit beat up. It's just
yes,
KKK.com, and it's just like, hey, you got 1 million views for the right reason. You just socked out the Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan, man. Come here, let's get you in a tie. Let's get
what
you
did you call it? What was it? What was the name of it? .com? What was it?
I forgot, man. It's got to be something.
Oh shit!
You're on to something. But it's just
something.
Streaming platform. And they're doing numbers on it. Like, it's gonna be such a big platform. people are faking hate crimes to get their shit socked out, to get clout off of it, you know?
And
Like
we have
scaring
to meet
ladies.
after this call, bro. We're gonna have to put some shit together. I'll build some shit, man.
Yeah, blinded man, and you see it like 2 years in the future, people are just flinching on old ladies to get knocked out, you know? It's like, I knew you'd show up. I knew you, like when Batman comes, like, I knew you'd come here and beat my ass, man. 2 million
I
views,
love
of
it.
course, you're in the subway.
I love it.
Yeah, but I mean, if I got anything, it's you're gonna hear me frequently say this because this isn't a conspiracy. I think we gotta check in on the lead in that water. Okay,
Yeah.
I don't want to get too far ahead of where I'm going with that, but
Hey,
it's inner city violence, and they've been having lead. Come on now.
I think them brothers in Flynn would hear you right now. You know what I mean?
They're like, this is the murder capital of the world. I'm like, well, what do you? They're eating
Look at the
screws.
water.
Yeah,
Look at the
like
water.
it's
Yeah.
like it's. I read something that was like 88% of the kids had like over federal limit lead exposure by the time they were in the second grade. And it's like, oh, okay, well, they're gonna shoot some shit up, you know. It's hard to react. So
All right.
we'll try to get these lead guys some help. We'll try to get this, you know, try to get the word out that you can like beat the assailant's ass if it's a hate crime. Maybe we'll start
Yes.
like a reward system.
Yes.
Hey, if you upload the footage, we'll give you a month free of Netflix. You know, if you see a opposite hate crime, a hate crime stopping, you know,
Yeah.
send us like send us your car insurance bill, and we'll pay one of your bills if you send us you stopping hate crime.